Welcome to Steel City Growth. I'm your host, Bill Ildenfritz. Each week, we'll explore the passions, expertise, and experiences of business owners and founders in the greater Pittsburgh area. Steel City Growth is proudly sponsored by Murphy Business of Pittsburgh, committed to providing exceptional services to meet all your business needs. Let's dive in.
But here's what I've learned about adversity. Adversity can be a propeller or it can be an anchor, and we all get to choose. You know, adversity and setbacks are the biggest differentiator on planet Earth because we're all guaranteed them.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Steel City Growth. If you're in a leadership position, this is a must-listen episode. My next guest's journey started in blue-collar roots, and now he's nationally recognized in leadership. He is truly inspiring. Jeff Hancher, welcome to the show, sir.
Bill, so good to be on, man. I'm glad that our paths have crossed and certainly value what you do for the community, and it's good to be with you and your audience.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So first question, I got to recently meet some of your family. How do they inspire you every day?
Man, I will tell you what. Simon Sinek says it best when he says, people will work for their what, but they'll die for their why. My family is my why. You know, I grew up in pretty humble beginnings, and I always had this vision that if I was ever blessed with a family, that I would do whatever it took, work as hard as I needed to work to give them a life that I didn't have. And man, it has been an amazing ride. I have an amazing wife and daughter and a son. And yeah, they certainly motivate me to show up every day and work hard.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's why I breathe every day is my family. So I totally hear you on that one for sure. I know you were in the military. Tell me a little about your military and tell me what lessons did you learn from being in the military?
Yeah, I would love to tell you that, that was all part of the plan, is that I was going to be an Army soldier one day. And the reality is this: I was running from something, not to something. Those are two very different things. You know, my high school years were pretty rough. I made a lot of bad decisions, didn't have a ton of direction, brushes with the law, alcohol abuse. I was going down a pretty bad path. I knew I wanted more, but I didn't know what it looked like, and college certainly wasn't a great option. I wasn't a good student, and I didn't have any money. So I joined the military. I'd love to tell you it's because I'm a patriot, although I love our country. You know, that wasn't the motivator. The motivator was to get out of the chaos. And so, yeah, I found myself on my very first commercial flight, had never been out of the tri-state. You know, a big weekend for us was going up to the Pymatuming Spillway and feeding the carp bread. And here I am, on this commercial flight, and found myself in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, running Tank Hill. And boy, that experience, it gave me some definition. It gave me a lot of character and organization and helped me grow up and really shape who I would become.
Excellent answer. So Jeff, taking back in time, did you always know you would be inspiring people and a recognized leader in leadership?
No, I would tell you it was the furthest thing from what I thought. I thought, a good life would be getting in one of these great coal mines in southwestern Pennsylvania or a steel mill and just providing an honest living, which, by the way, is not a bad life, especially compared to where I came from. And I just knew I wanted to work hard and have things be different. But I had no idea that, I would be used to help shape, people's lives and their trajectory. But I will tell you, the first hint of it that I got was in ninth grade health class. I was a horrible student. I didn't prepare well. I didn't study well. And one of our assignments was each person in the class was going to have to give an oral essay, and it had to do something health related. And she kind of left it wide open. And so I decided I'm certainly not going to do any research. I mean, who has time for that? So I was going to do an oral essay about my years as a baseball player and fitness and teamwork and, all of these things. And I was on the bus ride to school that morning, Bill, and I decided that was about the lamest thing that I could do, but I didn't really have a good alternative. And so I thought, what would be health related that I know a lot of? And so I decided I was going to talk to my class about what it was like to have a terminally ill parent. I had a mom that battled a disease called lupus, and I knew a lot about the disease and the impact that it had on our family. And so with no preparation, no research, no nothing, my name was pulled out of the jar, and I went up And I went on about a 20 to 30-minute conversation about lupus, of which I found myself in front of my classmates getting a little emotional, talking about the pain and the trauma that my family had been through. And I could feel this shifting in the room. And afterward, my teacher pulled me back while all my classmates left and said, "Jeff, I've been doing this for 20 years. And I have to tell you, you have a gift. I've never had a student that spoke the way that you speak." And she said, "I want you to know there's a difference between skills and gifts. You have a gift to communicate. I've never seen a class impacted that way. I, as a teacher, have never been impacted." She said, "I don't know where your path is going to take you, but I want to challenge you to hone your skills in communicating, because I believe someday you are going to impact a lot of people." And I kind of tucked that in my back pocket and considered it a nice compliment and went on about my day. But I've reflected on that day many times in the journey. So thank goodness, and thank you to every teacher that might catch this episode. We're grateful for you.
I love that answer. You know what I've always learned? You speak from the heart, that does connect with people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely there. So you're a business, if you're a business owner listening to this podcast, what do you think is the number one most important strategy for growing your business?
I would tell you it depends on the business, but if I were to give a general blanket answer, the best strategy is leadership. Full stop, in my opinion. That's not to say let's discard a sales strategy and a scaling strategy and a great marketing strategy and succession planning and recruiting and hiring and onboard, all the stuff. We got to do it all. But I can tell you this, in all of my years in the Fortune 500, time in A, and now building my own company and serving companies all over the country as they scale. Here's what I've come to learn, Bill, is that you can have the best product or service in the world that has tremendous market potential. But if you're void of healthy leadership culture, you're probably going to fail, and at best, you won't reach your potential. Adversely, I have seen best-in-class leadership cultures with mediocre or subpar products and services dominate a marketplace, because we need to live by this mantra that as leadership goes, so goes the culture, so goes the organization, so goes retention, so goes competitive advantage. And so if there's an area that I believe there's some shortfalls and some huge differentiators, it is not only hiring, but developing the leadership base that you have in your organization.
I agree with you. If you don't mind sharing, tell me a little bit about your past. I know it shaped you. So anything you want to share, you know, your past career, before you got into this, what are some of the things that affected you in a positive or negative way that got you to this point?
Yeah, look, there's been, plenty of adversity. But here's what I've learned about adversity. Adversity can be a propeller or it can be an anchor, and we all get to choose. You know, adversity and setbacks are the biggest differentiator on planet Earth because we're all guaranteed them. And certainly I had those. You know, I grew up, I was born into poverty. I had a mom that was battling a terminal disease. I had a dad that was medically disabled due to osteoarthritis that later led to amputations. You know, this environment, two very sick parents in and out of hospitals, in and out of surgeries, you know, a lot of prescription drugs in the house that led to some substance abuse and in and out of rehabs. You know, bad went to worse because not only did we have very little money, but the money that we had, it was being spent irresponsibly. And so many times we would be without electric, we would be without heat, you know, we would be without, you know, all of the normal things. Basically, we were camping in a house, and rarely did we stay anywhere too long because, you know, we'd be evicted. And so this led to a lot of misguidance and misdirection, because when I was a teenager, then I had freedom. And a teenager with freedom and little direction, the outcome is never good. So I'll let you fill in the lines there. And so, yeah, there was not any direction. I didn't know what the future could look like. I had no idea. But when I went to the military, it helped me grow up. They told me about this GI Bill where I could go to college for free. All I had to do was pay for my books. And I'm like, man, I'm really going to make tracks here. I'm going to do something that's never been done in most of my family history. I'm going to be college educated. And I was going to take my talents to California University of Pennsylvania. And I'm a few weeks away from starting, Bill, and I get a call from my dad that I had gotten so many times. They're sending mom home in hospice. But this time it was going to be a little different because this time was the time that my dad was going to be having his first leg amputation. So I have my mom being home, sent in hospice. My dad's having a leg amputated. And he asked me to put college on the back burner. And I did what you and anybody listening would do. And I put college on the back burner. And I went and got the nurses set up, got the prescriptions going. I didn't want to be a burden on my family. So I just went out looking for a seasonal job. And, I went out and bought a newspaper and just started looking at the classifieds. That's how we used to get jobs, right? And
Right.
the problem was I didn't have a lot of transferable skill. Nobody was looking for somebody to inventory M16 rifles, ironically, so I just needed a blue collar job. I come from a country area, working on farms growing up. I got a good work ethic. And so I found the perfect job. It was route delivery for Cintas Uniform Company. Pick up dirty clothes, throw them in the back of a truck, give them clean clothes. What I thought was going to be a seasonal job led to a 25-year career and rising the ranks in that Fortune 500 company and building a life that I didn't even know was possible. And I will tell you, it was at the hand of some great leaders that I am who I am today. And then I transitioned, scared to death, left that company and started Jeff Hancher Enterprises in December of 2019, not knowing that the world was going to shut down with a pandemic, and started building that company and have been doing that ever since in a very fulfilled role in serving other people.
Love that story. Thanks for being honest as well and
Yeah,
sharing the story. It's very touching.
sure.
But what do you think? Define a manager in your eyes versus a true leader.
Yeah, I would say if I had to summarize it, it's with one of my patented quotes, which is the goal is not to be a boss people report to, but to become a leader that people don't want to let down. When you're a true leader, you become somebody that people don't want to let down. When you are a manager, you're managing a lot of process, key performance indicators, balance sheets, sales contests, those kind of things. Managers manage process, leaders lead people. Now, I always get the question of which one's better, and the answer is we need both. We need both. Ideally, we need the unicorn that can do both. It's a rare find, but there are people listening. They lean too heavily on the management side. Then we have the leader that's listening. Where the manager and the leader start to draw separation is that leaders focus on minds and hearts. Managers focus on outcomes. Both are important, right? But here's what we know. If we can get to the root of what motivates somebody, why is success important to them? You asked me, one of your first questions is, what is my why? If we get to the root of why success is important to people and then develop skill around that and help them accomplish those things, what we get is loyalty. What we get is gratitude. And by the way, it's very good for the output of business. So that's how I would describe the difference between management and leadership. Both are needed in organizations. But what we're finding more than not, and I hope the tide is turning, is that we're too top heavy with managers because of the pressures that come with the business. The business needs results. But if we lose sight of people, I can tell you that results are not sustainable and they will be fleeting. We have to build great methods through strong leadership.
So true. So true for sure. Companies, they try to build culture in an organization, in their business. What do you think the number one mistake they make when they're trying to build culture?
I would say that there's a couple of things that come to mind, but the one that I would probably put at the top of the pile is that by and large, I'm not putting everybody in a box, there's a lack of real feedback in the workplace. There's a lack of healthy accountability in the workplace. When the pandemic hit, and now I don't have a job, I'm trying to build a company. The pandemic hit, I lost about 80% of my client base, and nobody was hiring, so my plan B wasn't even going to work. I sat in my office for the better part of 3 weeks, Bill, and I was on this quest to find what is the biggest culture and leadership challenge on planet Earth. And I pulled about 6 to 7 years of succession planning notes from my Fortune 500 job. We would take our annual pilgrimage to corporate, and we would assess literally every leader in this Fortune 500 company to find out, are they promotable? Are they well placed or should they be replaced? And who's on our bench that could be brought up into the ranks of leadership? Because we were in a high growth, fast growth company. We needed strong leaders. I didn't look at the ones that were doing well. In all of my research, I started to look at the leaders that were either well placed, not promotable, or they needed replaced. What were the reasons why? I boiled it down to two reasons. One was a lack of emotional intelligence, and two, a lack of healthy accountability, meaning they weren't leaning into the hard conversations that leaders need to have, or they were leaning into the hard conversations, but they weren't effective at doing that. I felt like emotional intelligence had been very well documented by the likes of Emotional Intelligence 2.0 and Tim Ferriss and all of these things. And so I went down this road to solve this problem of why is it that this is not part of a healthy culture? And that's where my performance management workshop came about, and later our book, Firm Feedback in a Fragile World. So if I were to answer it in summary, I would tell you the biggest attack on culture is a lack of healthy leaders that are willing to lean into the hard conversations and get a response from people that says something like this: thanks for letting me know, versus all the alternatives that we fear when we have tough conversations. This remains a big opportunity in building healthy culture.
No, I agree with you. Tell me a little bit more about feedback. What do you think some managers, leaders mistakes they make with feedback? Talk a little bit about feedback. Elaborate, please.
Yeah, well, I would tell you the first thing to know about feedback is if you're gonna give feedback, you have to ask yourself this $1,000,000 question, which is, have I earned the right to give the feedback? The first thing that has to happen before feedback is ever given is there has to be healthy expectations created. These expectations have to first be created. Second, we have to prove that they're reasonable and fair expectations, meaning let's not ask people to run 4-minute miles when they have titanium hips. You might need a 4-minute mile, but what's realistic? So the expectation has to be realistic, reasonable, and fair. The people have to be trained to meet or exceed the expectation. And most importantly, the team has to understand why the expectation is good for them, not just the customer and not just the company, although those are important. Once that expectation is set and it's agreed upon and they're well trained to meet or exceed it, now we've earned the right to feedback. Where feedback gets missing is a lot of times leaders will only give feedback when something is going wrong. You know, I call these the vanilla ice leaders. If there was a problem, I'll solve it, right? It's easy to step outside of your office and find problems, but we call this seagull leadership. When there's a problem, I swoop in, I make a big ruckus, I crap on everybody, and then I fly out, right? What we need to incorporate, and what I recommend to companies, is feedback comes in a cadence. Ideally, it's weekly for every employee in your company. And if somebody's listening, and I hear it all the time, we don't have time for that. Well, then you need more leaders. There is never a bad ROI in people development. And so I like this cadence of consistent feedback. So those are two things that have to be in play. There have to be expectations. Think speed limit sign. That's an expectation. All right, well, we got the expectations all up and down the interstate. Now there has to be a level of feedback, meaning if you're going over that speed limit, I have to give you feedback, and it may result in the third pillar, which is accountability. Think of a speeding ticket or a warning or whatever that might be. Those are the three pillars of healthy feedback: expectations, feedback, and then ultimately accountability.
I love that. So if I'm an employee who's not, in your example, got a speeding ticket. So I'm an employee who's not meeting the standard. How do you give me the appropriate feedback without, crushing my morale as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important as leaders to know your audience. I talk about in the book 3 types of feedback. I talk about directive feedback, I talk about collaborative feedback, and I talk about supportive feedback. If you get nothing else out of what I'm about to say and you're listening, just understand that all feedback is not created equal. For example, if you have a brand new employee that you're onboarding, you don't want collaborative feedback for them. Can you imagine being a new employee and the boss comes over to your desk on your second day and says, "So what do you think we should do today?" Well, I was kind of hoping you would tell me I have no clue what I'm doing, right? Collaborative feedback is not the approach. It has to be directive feedback for a new employee, or if there's a time sensitive or safety issue. That's when directive feedback is appropriate, and usually the only time it's appropriate. Collaborative feedback is that high tenured employee or that peak performer. You know, that peak performer that's driving most of the KPIs? Well, guess what? They need feedback too. But if you go directive with a peak performer, you're going to get defensiveness and you're going to be labeled a micromanager. Collaborative feedback leads peak performers and high tenured employees to finding the answer for themselves through asking great questions. And then ultimately is supportive feedback. Look, we're dealing with a workforce that's battling some real things. We're talking about families that are battling substance abuse, terminal diseases, health scares, divorces, infidelity, sick parents. This is the workforce that we are leading. So there does come a time that we have to maybe call a timeout and ask questions like, how is your family? How can I help? What do you need from me? There's a time and a place for this kind of leadership. What we have to do as leaders, we have to know our audience. There's no better way to know your audience than giving them time, which is why I love these consistent one-on-one check-ins that are structured and they're intentional. It's no different than a marriage or a relationship. The more time you spend with somebody, the more you know how to navigate with them in conversation. You get to understand their tendencies. Now I'm equipped to lead them better. Now when the accountability needs to happen, I've already exhausted every effective feedback system that I could, and now I have to move to accountability. But we have to know our audience. Passive leaders, they lean a lot towards supportive feedback no matter what. They love to bring a sheet cake in on Fridays. They celebrate every birthday, but they also get stabbed in the back and taken advantage of. Then we have the aggressive leader that's listening. They're all directive feedback. It doesn't matter if you were the sales rep of the year, you've been here 30 years. Everybody gets directive feedback. Well, that's the person that is a micromanager. They're driving compliance, not engagement. Compliance will get you results, but they won't get you sustainable results. When people are engaged with the mission, now they're working effortlessly, even when you're not around. Compliance is, if you're around, I'll work hard. It's like passing the place where the police sit in your hometown. You know where they sit, and when you get close, you do what you're told. But as soon as they're out of the rearview mirror, you're speeding again. So we need to find the middle, which is assertive leadership. The assertive leader knows their audience, and they know what feedback tool to pull out to be effective for outcome. Not to be right, but to be effective.
Love that answer. You know, earlier in my career, I was a nursing home administrator, and I dealt with nurses' aides and nurses, etc. And I remember sitting one time in the director of nursing's office, and I looked at her and I said, we have to understand that some of these nursing aides go home and get beaten. They have 5, 6 kids. They're barely able to put enough food on the table. We have to look at them as individuals. So, you know, and that was a huge mindset of mine and shift. And what you just said broke it down and made complete sense. But you're so correct. You're
It's so
correct.
true. I mean, look, leadership's not for the faint of heart. I mean, think about this. Like the person, Joe, we'll call him, that you talk to in the morning could be a different Joe by 3 o'clock in the afternoon because a text he received from home or, you know, a missed opportunity at work. You know, these mind shifts, they happen fast. That's why leadership is look, read the books, read the John Maxwell books, listen to the podcast like the one you're listening to, consume information, but realize leadership is much better caught than it is taught. We got to get around it. Why? Because it's such a nimble thing. The landscape is shifting every minute of the day. That's why leadership is not easy. It's very, very hard. But when we can get great at this, not only is it great for business, but it's great for legacy. You know, I have leaders that have transformed my life, meaning I can look back and say, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be who I am today. That should be the goal of every leader listening, is not only are we going to drive great business results, but I'm going to become a leader that people don't want to let down, and I'm going to make an impact on as many lives as I can.
Yes, so true, so true. When you, as a business owner, when you do have self-doubt, you're wondering, are you doing what's right, what's wrong? You're just doubting yourself. What are some of the things that helped you push through those challenges?
Yeah, well, again, the challenges are coming. There's no question about that. What we can control is how we respond to them and how we can prepare for them. We should be preparing for challenges. And when you're prepared, what you're doing is you're building muscle. You're building confidence. One of my favorite quotes, it goes like this, Bill. It says, if you lack confidence in self, you're twice defeated in the race of life. But with confidence, you have won even before you start. Meaning that you can build enough confidence that there's this mindset of, I'm going to go find the problem. I'm going to go look for the problem. Firemen that sit in the fire station for weeks on end get a little discontent. As crazy as that is to say, it's like, so you want something to catch on fire? Not really, but that's what I'm equipped to do. And so, yes, I'm kind of anticipating for the alarm to go off because this is what I'm built to do. The more confidence that we build in our leadership, the less that these storms have an opportunity to sway us. And I say this all the time to leaders and to people in general, leading or not. You're going to be in one of four camps in this life. And camp one is, I hope it doesn't come up. Camp two is, if it comes up, I'll wing it. Camp three is, if it comes up, I'm ready to talk about it. But then there's camp four, and camp four is, if it doesn't come up, I'm bringing it up. And a lot of people would look at camp four and say, well, that seems very arrogant and condescending to me. Not really. If you know CPR and somebody the next aisle over in the grocery store says, help, help, they're not breathing, nobody's thinking, I don't want to run over there because that would be very showy and arrogant. No, you're in camp four in this moment. I'm going to run and breathe life into death. Matter of fact, I've been kind of in a sick way waiting for this opportunity because I've been preparing in CPR training. I am ready to go. Camp four leaders, I will tell you, it is the most competitive advantage that there is because the storms are coming. They're coming for all of us. And how we weather the storm will be one of the most determining factors on who advances fastest. So I would say confidence and how we prepare ourselves to get into camp four, what we consume, who we surround ourselves with. This builds the muscles we need to weather the storms.
I love it. I love how you break that down. If I'm listening today and I'm going to become a better leader, what are a couple actionable steps I can start doing today to become a better leader down the road?
Master the art of asking great leadership questions is where I would begin. Look, not to self-promote, but you can go to our website right now and get a list of 52 questions that are my favorite leadership questions. If you want free ones, I have them broken down into my top 5. Just go to the free resources page on our website. But I will tell you this, the answer to everything you need as a leader is found in the best question. We know this in sales too. Ask great questions, uncover buying motives. Look, in leadership, it's the same. Ask great questions. You will uncover your biggest opportunities. The other thing that I would tell you is this, assess your why behind leadership. Far too often, people go into leadership because it comes with a better parking spot and a nicer office and certainly more pay. But I will tell you this, those are the leaders that typically end up very burnout, very depressed, high anxiety, blood pressure medication, because it's not an easy thing to navigate. The heart of the most effective leader is the leader that sees an opportunity to transform people's lives. So I would tell you, to be an effective leader, you have to think about, what is my motivation behind this role and this title? Now, can you be a leader and not care about people? You can, but it's kind of like petting a cat backwards. You can pet a cat backwards, but the cat's miserable. You're miserable. Nobody's having a good time. Why would you do that? There may be a better lane for you. And then the third thing that I would add to that, as far as foundational, why should I go into leadership or stay into leadership? And how do I begin developing myself? Mentoring. Man, I will tell you this, mentoring has changed my life. This subject, I believe, is not talked about enough, because if I were to ask 100 people listening to this show, do you think mentoring is important? Yes, I do. Do you currently have a mentor? I would tell you probably 20% would say, yes, I do. But 80% would probably say, no, I don't. Have you ever had a solid mentor? Not really. But you see the power in it? Oh yeah, absolutely. And then if I ask this question, do you know how to obtain a great mentor? No, I really don't. What do? Do you just walk up to people and ask? How do you go about doing that? I think more needs to be talked about in how to acquire great mentors. When you get around people that have been where you're trying to get to, they can give you the keys to the kingdom. Because you can't just read a Tiger Woods book and be great at golf, although you should read his book. But if you played 18 holes with Tiger every Sunday, it's going to start to rub off. This is the power of mentorship. The Cliff Notes version of this would be this. Find those mentors that you're like, wow, they're amazing at what I want to be. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better salesperson, a better leader, a better entrepreneur. Find those people and find ways to serve them. So many mentors are turned off because they feel like people are leeches and they're just kind of sucking them dry of information and resources. No mentor's like that. But if you get on their radar and find ways to serve them, and that might be liking a post, commenting on a post, signing up for their newsletter, I don't know what that is, supporting a cause that matters to them. Find ways to serve a mentor, and you're going to find that they're going to open up their calendar for you, and then go prepared with great questions. Those three things I think are fundamental in developing the leader who you're called to be.
I love that answer. And what I love about you, and I mean this sincerely, you do what you say. And I'll give you an example. We just spoke a few times, but you and I were talking about your son. And you said, yes, one of the things I encourage my son is to go out, find good leaders, find good mentors, and talk to them and ask questions and learn and put all that together and hopefully become a better leader. So you're even teaching that your son to do those things. I think that's just great advice that you give for sure.
Yeah, man. If you're in the Pittsburgh area and haven't heard of Jeff Hancher yet, you're probably going to, because he is in everybody's LinkedIn direct messages. He's on this quest to learn. And look, by the way, I haven't arrived. I'm still doing that as well. You know, I got guys like Tim Elmore and Mark Cole from the Maxwell team and Mike Weinberg and Chris Robinson and Chris Godey. These are guys that are, I mean, they're at the top of their space in what I'm trying to do. Look, this mission, this journey to success, one, it's all uphill and the finish line just keeps moving. And so we can't ever stop learning and consuming and getting around great people.
Totally agree. So you wrote a book, I know that. So what is the book title again? And tell me a little bit about your book, please.
Yeah, man, it is Firm Feedback in a Fragile World. Man, the title, I think, really says it all. How do we give this firm feedback in a fragile world? Man, I am very excited, humbled to report the book has become a USA Today national bestseller. And I don't say that to get applause from the audience, but to say we poured our heart and soul into the content of this book because I do believe that it unlocks the answers to some of leaders' biggest challenges today. How do I overcome fear of delivering feedback? New leader, tenured leader, it doesn't matter. You know, we do these workshops all the time, Bill, and we have the most tenured founders, executives tell us all the time, like, as successful as I've been, nobody has ever taught me this. And so we give you the framework. You know, it's not a feel-good read for the beach, although you can read it at the beach. There's framework in there. You know, at the end of every chapter, we're asking you thought-provoking questions. We're giving you application activities so that you can become a leader that can be impactful and effective. You know, if you think of your Mount Rushmore of leaders, Bill, and anybody listening, you know, these would be 4 people that you would say, man, if it wasn't for those 4 people, I wouldn't be who I am. And you could probably think of them pretty quickly because it's like, yeah, coach, teacher, family, boss. If I were to ask the question, were they tough on you? Were those 4 people tough on you? The answer is always yes. But here's the follow-up question. Although they were tough on you, did you know they cared deeply about you? The answer is always yes. So here's what we know and have experienced in our own life with our Mount Rushmore of leaders, is that you can be extremely firm and tough and also care well at the exact same time. The key is earning the right to have a tough conversation. It doesn't mean that people are going to love the firm feedback, but I believe that we can get to a place in leadership that we can give the toughest feedback we need to give, to have somebody look at us in the face and say, thanks for telling me. And they feel this almost grief that they even put you in a place that they had to say it because of all the meaningful deposits that you've made in their life. I'm here to report that is possible. That Mount Rushmore that you thought of, listener, they're proof that it's possible. And I'm here to tell you, whether you're a passive leader, you're an introvert, the great thing about leadership, it is learned. So no matter what your personality is, it can be learned, and we will do our best to equip you through this content to be a more impactful leader.
Tell me a little bit more about that, your organization. I know you have, your book and you have these workshops. What else do you do to help leaders?
Yeah, we do quite a bit of leadership workshops. We do that both inside of larger organizations, but we also want to serve that startup entrepreneur and small business through open enrollment workshops. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, it's where we host them. We're sitting at about 60 to 70% of the people that are in those workshops are now flying in to be there. But if you're a small business and you don't have the big budget, yeah, you can pay for one seat in that workshop. We also do quite a bit of sales training and consulting and development as well. The success of the book has put me on quite a few stages. We're doing a lot of kickoff meetings and Christmas luncheons. I have 2 specific keynotes that I do. One is specific to leaders and it's around the book, and one is more for anybody in an organization. We've been traveling a lot more doing keynote speaking. And then lastly, we do have an executive mastermind. When I started the company, I did quite a bit of executive coaching. I'm not doing as much executive coaching anymore just because of capacity and time. And as a result, we built the Executive Mastermind. And this is a community we're very excited about, where we're really sharpening one another. We're minimizing isolation that comes with senior leadership. And we're taking decades of experience, in these groups and really sharpening one another. I moderate these sessions myself, but we got some of the finest. 60% of the members are from the greater Pittsburgh area, and the other 30% are anywhere from Mexico City to Los Angeles, Chicago, Indianapolis, and all over the place. But yeah, if you're looking for a place to sharpen and bring fresh ideas into your organization, we're excited about those masterminds as well.
Yeah, I can safely say that I've heard from several of the people in your masterminds, and they absolutely love it. They get a lot out of it, so you're doing a heck of a job for sure. You and your team are doing a heck of a job.
Man,
Nothing but
we enjoy it. Thank you.
Yes, excellent. What's one thing you would give your younger self? You can go back in time and offer a little advice to your younger self. What would that be?
I would tell my younger self that it's going to be okay. I lived in so much fear as a young man, not knowing. I got in some trouble as a teenager, and I got kind of put in the covering of some counselors and state agents, if you will, and they circled back with me a little bit later in life to kind of see how things were going. And they seemed to be going very well, and they did these studies, and I had to fill out surveys, and they said, we can tell you this now because you're in a healthy place, but statistically speaking, you had about a 90% chance of incarceration and a 25% chance that you wouldn't live past 25 years old, given your environment and the decisions you were making. And there's reasons that those things were happening. And if I could go back to my late teen, early 20-year-old self, I would tell myself, this adversity has an expiration date. You don't know what your potential is. Focus on incremental improvement, and it's going to be okay. And I hope somebody else hears that message too. Adversity has an expiration. It doesn't matter where you came from. You can control where you're going. Take that mess, take that adversity, and make it the most epic story that's ever been written. And I'll be cheering for you as you do it.
Jeff, honestly, I can't even top that. That is, we probably should end the show on that, because that is just perfect advice.
Thank
for
you.
sure. If somebody wants to connect with your company, what's the best way to connect with your company?
Man, we're pretty easy to find. It's my first and last name, Jeff Hancher, like Jolly Rancher, but it's with an H. The website is jeffhancher.com. My LinkedIn is my name, my Instagram, my Facebook. It's all my name. You know, if you're interested in the book, I would tell you to take a little bit of a detour and go to firmfeedbackbook.com. The reason I would recommend going there is if you buy the book off of that website, we're also going to give you several free resources that come with the book to help you not just read a book, but digest the book to be a little bit more impactful. So firmfeedbackbook.com if you want those free resources.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm going to thank you. You are truly inspiring.
Thanks.
I love the interactions we have had so far, and I can probably talk to you all day because you were definitely inspiring. And you, like you said, you raised from adversity up to where you're now, and you're now nationally recognized and doing a heck of a job. But what I think is even more is I love the way you were talking about your son, your wife too, but you were talking about your son. So from man to man, that's what impressed me the most. Your face lit up when you mentioned Jake, and you have amazing accomplishments, all the things you've done. But I really respect it when you sat there for a moment talking about your son. I just find that totally admirable for sure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so proud of him. So proud of my daughter. And just thinking of the barriers and the progress they're having at their age, that they're just light years ahead of me. And look, if you connect with Jake and take a discovery call with him, message me and I'll send you a free book. That's how much I want to see that dude win. So he's a financial advisor, and man, that dude is passionate about this and serving people. I know that's a shameless plug, Bill, but he's fighting out of that obscurity. So go find Jake Hancher, take a discovery call with him, and screenshot me that, and I'll send you a signed copy of my book.
That's a great offer for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were going to say that, but that's a great offer.
There we go. There we go.
Definitely.
We got to stick together and help each other win, right?
That is correct. Well, I want to thank the audience for the show. Please, if you heard something in this podcast, definitely share with others. This has been another exciting episode of Steel City Growth. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Steel City Growth. Thanks for joining us. For show notes and more, visit steelcitygrowth.live. Until next time.